Hello, it's Katrina at the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make a quilt using up all your tiny scraps. So you're going to need your scrap basket with all your tiny scraps in. So you're also going to need a metre of background fabric. I've used a white on white. You could use cream or plain. A rotary cutter and a ruler. Your sewing machine with a neutral thread and a 1/4 inch foot, and an iron and a pressing mat. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out these white squares. So you're going to need 5-inch squares, and you can make this quilt as big as you want or as small as you want, depending how many scraps you've got and how much white fabric or background fabric you've got. So the first thing you need is to cut 5-inch squares from your background fabric. And then the next thing you need to do is you need to cut your scraps up. Now, I ask myself, what is my smallest scrap? And I keep all sorts of scraps. But for today, you're going to need pieces that measure 2 1/4 inches square. So jelly roll strips are perfect for this. So I'm just going to straighten this one up, and I'm going to, oh, that one's quite straight actually. So I'm going to measure 2 1/4. And I'm going to cut that. And then if I carefully cut off these pinked edges, just carefully straighten that up, I'll get 2 1/4 out of that. So you just need 5-inch squares and then tiny 2 1/4 inch squares. Perfect. So I'll just shave that bit off there, and there I've got a 2 1/4 inch square. So the next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to mark your squares. Let's get rid of that. So you're going to need to mark your squares on the diagonal, as I've done here. So you just need to draw a line corner to corner on the diagonal on all your little scrappy squares. And then I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you how we create the block. So for each one, I take one of my little squares and I place it on the corner. Now the important thing is not to put your line on the corner going into the centre. You want to turn it the other way. So you need your diagonal line coming from the centre to the other corner. And you're going to do that on both corners. And then very carefully, I'm going to sew on the line that I've drawn. I'm just going to line that up. And then on the opposite corner, I'm going to do the same. So again, make sure that I've got my corner in the right position. So the very corner of my white square, I don't want a line on it. So if I show you what I mean, I don't want it going like that because it's not going to work. So turn that round so that your diagonal line comes from the centre of the white going across to the other corner. So I'm just going to do that again. So you would do that until you've got all of your white squares with 2 little coloured squares on opposite corners. So you're going opposite to opposite like this. And you could sit and chain piece them all until you've got them all done. Then we're going to go over to the iron and we're going to press these back. So before I press these, I'm just going to trim them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to lay this 1/4 inch line actually on my stitch line, and I'm going to cut that away. So I'm now creating my own 1/4 of an inch seam. And then I'm going to press these back. So this is our block. So it's that easy. I loved doing this quilt because it's really quick and easy. So you can see that you've got your coloured corners and you lay it out so it looks like this. So you always keep whichever corner you start with. So here I've got this in the top left corner, and then every single one is repeated like that. So you would put that there. Or if you wanted to change the colour, you could just turn it round. So you've always got your coloured pieces in the top left and bottom right. So if we just go back to the quilt and you see how that's laid out. So you can see here, top left, bottom right. And on this quilt, I've done 5 rows or columns by 6. And then the next thing I did, when I'd got those all together, I put a little fillet on here. Now this piece of fabric was cut at 1 inch and folded in half. And then I've put another white border, and I don't know if you can see on the camera, but this is actually a different white on white to this one. It's because I was trying to use up all of my scraps. I think the only thing I bought for this was the binding and the fillet, which I should have said at the beginning was that you would need 1/2 metre of fabric for a quilt this size. So I'm just going to measure this border again to tell you how big that is. So I cut this border at 4 inches, so I've got a 3.5 finish around the edge. So the whole quilt here measures 35 by 30, which is a lovely size. I've quilted it going across the diagonal here. So I've not done any quilting around the colours. I have just gone through the diagonal across like that, and I really think that that's enough. And then I've done a little bit round here, so you could put something in the borders if you wanted to, or you could do more cross hatching here, whatever you wanted to do. The back, I've used yet another white on white that I had left over, and you would need about 1 metre for the back, but you could use any fabric. You could even do a pieced back, so you really use up all of your scraps. And that is a little Scrapbuster quilt, and I just love it. I just love the colours. I really enjoyed making this quilt. It was really quick and easy to do, and it went together. And I think with all these splashes of different colours, it's really quite an effective little quilt. This would be perfect for a beginner, or as I say, perfect for using up all those tiny little scraps. So as always, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.